It's funny, the universe and connectivity, the bouncing neutrons all over the place. We happened to bump into a particular person that really liked what we had to say and liked our philosophy on learning. And this was before we had developed any of our technologies. And he was head of a fairly large international mining organization. So he said, you know what, come in, talk to us, because I'm not sure what you can do for us, but I feel like you can do something. So we went in with pure curiosity and 100% intent to listen. And we sat there and we went, you know what, we can help you. And this is what we can do. And he kind of took a moonshot on us and went, you know what, let's do it.
Welcome to the Leadership and Legacy podcast, where we interview inspiring CEOs, entrepreneurs, and software leaders who are building remarkable companies and legacies in the world. I'm your host, Austin Yoder, founder of Magrathea Partners, an entrepreneurial investment firm dedicated to acquiring and growing one great founder-owned software company. As part of my journey, I'm learning from inspiring leaders and builders and gathering the most valuable insights and advice I learn along the way here with you, my wonderful audience, so that we can all learn and lead better together. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you'll find as much value and insight in the show as I do. Hello, and welcome back to the Leadership and Legacy podcast. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Tamara Vatcher, CEO of TrainingWorks, a learning solutions company based in Newfoundland and Labrador that has trained more than 3,000 workers across 8 sectors, resulting in more than 1,500 industry certifications. It's really an honor to have Tamara join us today and share some insights into leadership and her journey. So thank you so much for being with us today.
And thank you very much for having me, Austin. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I would love it if you could just introduce yourself a little bit for our audience. Tell us a little bit about TrainingWorks and the problem that you solve.
Sure. So again, my name is Tamara Vatcher and I'm CEO of TrainingWorks. We started TrainingWorks around 9 years ago now, and it is an ed tech company, and we specifically work with industries to upskill their workforces. We started out as a pure consultancy. We would satellite in and do skills assessments on individuals, compare it against the organizational strategy, identify gaps, and then broker in training. But as they say, I think it's necessity is the mother of all invention. That was a really, really labor intensive process. So what we started to do is look for ways to optimize the entire process and get to the skills gaps that the individuals in the workforce have. And we ended up creating our first piece of technology, which is Skilltinuous. From there, we entered into the mining sector and the marine transportation sector and really found our niche in health and safety and learning and training and development. Though it's not the only thing we do, it is a passion of ours. And we leveraged our Skilltinuous portal in those industries, specifically to human factors and behavioral-based safety. From there, we noticed that fatigue was fairly prevalent in the industries we were working in and is a hazard. So then we started to say to ourselves, how do we support human performance so that the skills and the learning that are actually being given to the individual stick and they can transfer it into behavior? And we've just finished a project actually in the ocean sector with oil and gas companies, along with a fishing company up in Nunavut. And we have unplugged our competency-based assessment and plugged in biometrics. So we have created an algorithm that models fatigue. And when fatigue is identified in the individual, it then triggers micro-learning specifically to health and safety interventions that they can do in the work site to keep them safer. But the longer term, we're looking at mitigating fatigue. So that means awareness training around fatigue and the level of fatigue you have. Health and wellness tips, sleep hygiene, diet, and exercise. So it's been like a fairly interesting curve in the road, but each thing is connected in the end, sort of creating that continuum to support human performance and learning and development.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like fascinating technology that you've developed. And in a world where it's very easy to be fatigued, I'm grateful to learn that you're helping to solve that problem. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about your journey to this point. I think you started at Kaplan, you shifted into adult learning and literacy on the government side. you give us a quick intro to how did you progress to this point? How did you get to the CEO seat?
So, I mean, I guess the baseline of it all is that I've always loved education. Even when I was very young, I used to love watching how people learned. And when they succeeded, when they learned, what a wonderful thing that it was. So I was just naturally drawn to it from the very beginning. So again, I got my undergrad actually not in education, but I was always doing things in the education sphere, and some of my graduate work was then focused on education. They actually Kaplan came to me, and interestingly, the lady that was head of the organization, I was a clown at a birthday party because that's how I got my way through university. I clowned my way through university, and it was a great side job. Loved children, loved communicating with them. She happened to be there. And she approached me and she's like, "What are you doing in university?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing," and she goes, "I'd like you to come down and talk to me." And I went down and we hit it off automatically. She said, "You're a great communicator. I think you would make a great instructor. Come in and start working for us." So that's how I got my foot in the door. And then just sort of, as you are well aware, you kind of get in, you find your spot, and then you begin to move. Um, I was with Catherine, a lot of international work, a lot of fun. But then my son arrived, and I was one of these women that took an off ramp because I really wanted to be home. I couldn't travel all over the world anymore, and took 5 years off and stayed home with my son. And then entered back into the workforce here in Newfoundland and Labrador with government. It was very well structured and very reliable with a lot less travel, which facilitated me raising my family. And once he was a little bit older, then I was looking again at the private sector and went, it's time to get back into it. And that's when I left, and myself and my business partner started Training Works 8 years ago
I
now.
love that story from clown to CEO. Definitely one of the coolest stories that I've heard of on the path to CEO. So you're in corporate and industry training broadly. Tell us a little bit about how the industry has changed and evolved since you started 8 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, everything has changed so radically. 8 years ago, there was a lot of still traditional based training where people would haul their employees off the line, put them into classroom based training, bring them back. And so, much more traditional, not as agile, especially in the industries that we were working in. Now, what we're seeing is the learning is becoming much more adaptive, much more agile. It's happening in the moment, in the position. So they're not necessarily being taken off the line. They are creating scenarios that work around the employee in the place that they are, which is really exciting because the efficacy of classroom-based training, you can go in and learn, but you walk out and you lose most of it, and it's never commuted into behavior. Going to where the employee is, giving them what they need when they need it, really optimizes the behavior change, which is really what we're after because learning is the first step. Behavior change is the second, and it's the end goal.
Mm, fabulous. So to play that back to you, it sounds like, things are moving from a static model to a much more adaptive in the moment model, bringing learning to where employees are.
Absolutely. And building out also what we're finding too is harnessing the knowledge that the employees have already and
Hmm.
embedding it in their learning. So it's in a familiar context. They see themselves in the learning and they actually feel valued in the entire learning process.
I love that. And and how do you see the industry evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? Will it continue to go in this adaptive direction? How are things evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
You're going to see the learner more and more at the epicenter of all of the systems that are being built. So it will be about finding out ways how to really truly pinpoint what the learner already knows, targeting what they don't, but also letting them have autonomy on where they want to bring their learning journey. And you're seeing that in all of the technologies. personally, where we're headed and where we've seen a great deal of progress is you're plugging in really non-traditional inputs into these systems now. So, for example, we've plugged in biometrics because we understand that fatigue impacts learning. If you're fatigued, your ability to learn is greatly diminished. So all of a sudden you have an input now of biometrics. There's other things as well. We're working with manufacturers to develop prototypes of geofences for learning. So manufacturers train on their piece of equipment when somebody buys the equipment, but it's tough because you have a whole new organization with a piece of equipment and you get 5 days of training on it. So
Mm.
integrating geofences where the employee will actually walk into the zone of the equipment and be able to access learning specifically to that equipment so that it reaffirms the knowledge they already have and fills the gaps that they may not. So, I mean, it's headed in some really, really exciting directions. And honestly, I don't think I can see where it's going to be in 8 years' time because I couldn't see where we are today 8 years ago. But all I know is it's pretty exciting, and the changes I do believe are going to be much more focused at enhancing and supporting the learner themselves.
What about a story of customer success? Is there a particular story of customer success that you're very proud of from your time at TrainingWorks?
Absolutely. Like I have mentioned before that we're a smaller organization. We're scaling now, but when we first started out, there were four of us, and we got invited in just through, it's funny, the universe and connectivity and, sort of the bouncing neutrons all over the place. We happened to bump into a particular person that really liked what we had to say and liked our philosophy on learning. And this was before we had developed any of our technologies, and he was head of a fairly large international mining organization. So he said, you know what, come in, talk to us, because I'm not sure what you can do for us, but I feel like you can do something. So we went in, and we went in with pure curiosity and 100% intent to listen. And we sat there and we went, you know what, we can help you. And this is what we can do. And he kind of took a moonshot on us and went, you know what? Let's do it. And we did it. And a small organization in an international mining company. And since then, we have proliferated throughout their organization. And I think that's the power of connection, of partnerships, and the ability to connect with a shared purpose. And I think I'm really proud of our organization and our team because that's rooted in our culture and our philosophy. And
Mm.
I think it's systemic, and that is something that we are very proud of.
I love that. A spirit of curiosity and listening first as you build up relationships with clients.
Hi, it's Austin, your host, with a brief interruption. Since this podcast is free and not supported by ads, I have a very quick ask for you. If you're finding value in this conversation, please consider sharing it with another leader or aspiring leader who you think would enjoy it so that we can learn and lead better together. And if you're a software founder considering a successful exit to a partner who will love your team just as much as you do, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email at austin@magratheapartners.com. That's Austin at Magrathea, Magrathea, magratheapartners.com. Thanks, and now back to the show.
So next question. Our audience is primarily, other leaders, CEOs, and students who aspire to be leaders. So everybody is always growing as a leader. Um, Two skills that every leader and CEO need are sales and managing people. I would be very curious if you have any best advice for sales.
What I try to do is I try to bring my passion to the table, and people pick up on your genuine desire to want to assist and support them in what they're trying to achieve. I also know there are technical components to sales that are critically important. They're not my forte. That would be my business partner, and he is very good at it. But for me, for sales, just my advice is never sell. Like, bring honesty, your genuineness, and show people the passion that you have for what you're bringing to them, and it almost sells itself in my
Mm.
mind, though I'm sure there are other sort of components to that, and I'm very mindful and respectful and in awe oftentimes because it's sort of like the art of war. There is the art of sales too. So I'm mindful of it and very aware of it. I just don't have it mastered. I will bring the passion and everything else to it, and then the other people come in well executed, that sort of then move through the mechanics of the sales.
I love that. Authenticity, curiosity, listening, and when the stars align and the right value meets the right problem, then the sale happens by
Exactly.
itself.
Exactly. And the right people at the table, that diversity on your team that know
Yeah.
that when I don't have it technically handled, they have it
Hmm.
technically handled.
Hmm.
Or so, and that mix of bringing the right people to the table. And that mix is oftentimes determined by your client. Understand your client before you go in there. What is your client's personality? What are they looking for? What have they done historically? Where are they headed? And make sure that your team have their needs covered off.
I love that. And would you have any best advice for managing people?
That I'm still learning and will continue to learn throughout my entire journey. Early on in my career, as you often are, is you're a lone sort of object moving towards a goal. And somebody once said to me, and it was a great piece of advice, it says, if you want to get there quickly, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. So early in my career, it was quick and fast and let's get there. It was all about the destination. Leading people takes patience. It takes meticulous communication, and you don't say it once, you say it 10 times because everybody has all of these variables change around you all the time. And the notion that you say it once and everybody gets it, it's impossible. That's not how we learn. So it's patience, it's clear, concise communication, and it is communicate, communicate, communicate. It's understanding that diversity is such a powerful thing. Sometimes it's harder to integrate because when everybody has a shared sort of belief system and common core constructs, it's easy. You're a cohesive group. We have an international team that have different cultural mores, different experiences, and you have to learn to understand one another. So once you do, like what a powerhouse, because you're coming at it from every single angle and there's no one challenge that is not spliced and diced a million different ways from so many different perspectives. So I will say patience, communication, and understanding the true value of the people that sit before you and respect for everything that they bring to the table.
Beautifully said. What would be your vision for the next 5 to 10 years? You mentioned you're scaling, you're developing this new technology, you're building this amazing international team. What's the vision for the next 5 to 10 years at TrainingWorks?
Well, right now for fatigue defense, we're in the R&D phase. So we have 2 or 3 research projects happening over the next 18 months to further refine the algorithm and also the app itself to make it more user friendly. And so we're looking at taking that to the international market late in 2025. We're looking at going through our verticals right now. We have 4 large international clients or partners right now where we are contained within Canada, and we are looking at now proliferating out through their international operations.
Hmm.
So we do have a lot of growth plans over the next 5 to 10 years. Again, it's tough. I can't look to 10 years because I know I'll be wrong. So within the next 5 years, it's growth. It's tripling our size in regard to our staffing and our team. And then our revenue projections with the launch of Skilltinuous and Fatigue Defense into the international market are
Hmm.
set to compound by around 5 over the next 3 years. And then again, we'll see what happens in 5 years' time.
An inspiring international and global vision. And is there any question that I should have asked that I haven't asked so far?
No, I don't think so. I think they were very well thought out, well formulated questions. The only thing that I think that I would ask, because I'm curious, and there was a philosopher, Marshall McLuhan, he was a Canadian philosopher, and he said once upon a time that it's not the message, the medium is the message.
Mm.
And I was really curious about you. Oh, you are the medium. So I would love to see you interviewed and understand a
Thank
little
you.
more. about you and what influenced your choice of questions. So I answered your questions, but there's a whole story behind why you selected those questions. And I would just like to get to know you a little bit more, what your plans are for the next 5 to 10 years, and see it that way. So no questions, just more curiosity about who you are and what your plans are.
That's so kind of you to ask, and of course, happy to share. I mean, doing this show very much as a way to learn and, put atoms into the universe to bump around and form new connections and friendships. I've been in and around education for most of my career, kind of on the K through 12 side in Taiwan, and then in higher ed in the States, where I had the opportunity to work at the business school at Stanford with a number of professors who are entrepreneurial and work with a lot of CEOs and leaders. I spent a little bit of time on the investing side after my time at Stanford, and am in an entrepreneurial role myself at the moment, looking for a company to partner with and bring some leadership to. So this podcast is very much part of that journey. I need to be a continuous learner and learn from people across functions and disciplines who are really building companies in the world. I think I love learning by books and podcasts, but really learning from other inspiring people and leaders like yourself, Tamara, is the best way to learn and develop myself as a leader. So that's the short answer to the question. But hopefully, in 5 to 10 years, maybe I will have found a founder to partner with and lend some skills to, and hopefully I will have learned from many other inspiring leaders like you along the way.
Well, that's very kind of you, and thank you for sharing that as well. And it's easy to see that you bring your genuine self to the table, and that's pretty incredible. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was very a kind question of you to ask. And I guess the title of the podcast is the Leadership and Legacy Podcast. So we always close on the topic of legacy. And I would be very curious to know, what does legacy look like for you and for TrainingWorks?
We are in health and safety. All of our technologies have been about supporting human performance and keeping them safer. And interestingly, we're in the mining industry. But the root of that is that my father was a miner and I grew up in a mining town. And when I was 3 years old, he was diagnosed with silicosis and they had to remove one of his lungs. Now, I remember that as a little girl, and I remember sitting next to his bed and being very fearful and very so worried that we were going to lose him. So, what I hope our legacy is that the technologies that we are developing are going to keep people safer and that not only less people being hurt, but saving the families, the pain and the suffering that comes with seeing a loved one hurt. So if we can do that, once, then that's a wonderful legacy. If we can do it 10,000 times, then that's an even better one. So if we can help people be safe, not be injured and be healthy, then that's the legacy.
I love it. I don't think there could be a better way to end the conversation. So I will close, but thank you so much for your time. This really was an inspiring conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot. I know that our audience will also be able to learn a lot from your insights today. So I will hit the record button here, but thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Austin. Great to meet you.